Random House Audio presents All is Vanity by Christina Schwarz. Read for you by Blair Brown. All is vanity. I made me great works, I builded me houses, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Ecclesiastes. Chapter 1. Margaret. I was a promising child. When I was 7, I spent an entire week hunkered down on the cranberry red carpeting in my father's study, building a scale model of the Temple of Athena at Paestum. I carved the columns out of ivory soap with a paring knife and pushed red clay through my Play-Doh press to tile over the styrofoam roof. I painted a frieze, which was cheating and ultimately unsatisfactory, since it was not authentically three-dimensional. My father wondered why not the Parthenon, but I wasn't interested in the obvious. "Everyone knows the Parthenon, Dad," I said in a superior tone, although, in fact, I knew no one other than he who was at all acquainted with the Greeks. 3 months after I'd finished my temple, my little brother Warren was garaging his Hot Wheels in it. Ambition deflated. When I was 8, I sewed 2 chamois I swiped from the garage into a little dress in the style of the Lakota Sioux. You'd think this would be less ambitious than the Temple of Athena, but the beadwork was extensive. Beads were very big then. My friends and I sat cross-legged on the cement patio with little cups of color-coded plastic treasure near our knees and threaded them on elastic to give to one another as necklaces and bracelets. I had to cut apart 5 of the 6 chokers my very best friend Letty had given me to get enough beads just to finish the bodice of the dress. My mother was less pleased with the Lakota costume than she'd been with the temple. Architecture, yes. Sewing, no. But at that point in my career, I didn't care what my mother or anyone else thought. I didn't care that the columns of my temple had bits of sticky string tied around them to pump the gas, Warren explained. My pleasure was all in the making. I could go on. I laid out the city of in clay on the ping-pong table, rendered a map of Asia as experienced by Marco Polo, compiled a catalogue of Scottish clans, and produced a page of medieval-looking illumination with hand-mixed inks. But I think my point is clear. I was precocious. I was enthusiastic, unswerving, creative. I had imagination. It took me only 20 years to realize that none of this mattered. What you find out in your 30s is that clever children are a dime a dozen. It's what you do later that counts, and so far, I had done nothing. But I was going to change that, starting right now, this morning, Saturday, June 15th. I'd set the alarm for 4:45 and was at my desk at 5. The sky over lower Manhattan was the gray of used wash water. I would shower around 9, I decided, to refresh myself after logging a decent morning's work. I had, easy to hand, 2 new and newly sharpened pencils, the soft number 1s I liked, and a legal pad for notes. The cursor pulsed eagerly on the blank screen before me. I drew my feet under me and sat on my heels. I leaned forward, ready, nearly holding my breath. It seemed as though, with just a nudge, my novel would spin from my pent-up imagination in skeins of gorgeous, moving words. Elaine pushed her fingers through her long, dark hair in the pearly dawn, I typed. It was the first sentence that came into my head, and then rested a moment, reaching to tease from my own hair a snarl the cat had painstakingly worked into it during the night. Why Elaine? Should my main character have the name that came first into my head? Shouldn't the name suit the character the way Daisy suited Daisy Buchanan? With one of my pencils, I printed neatly on the legal pad, "Buy baby naming book." "Margaret?" My husband's voice came from the bedroom, muffled by down comforter and sleep. "Ted, I'm working," I said, a touch of righteous indignation in my tone. "Come back to bed," he murmured dreamily. 14 hours before, I'd been an English teacher at Gordonhurst Academy, a private school on the Upper East Side. The administration had put on a little party in the Marshall Room to send off all of us who weren't coming back in the fall, with Chinese chicken salad, a favorite cafeteria offering, and grape juice made adult by the addition of cranberry and seltzer. One by one, we were called to stand before the portrait of Fitzhugh Marshall to collect a handshake and a gift. Susie Cargill, an art teacher who was having a baby and had decided to stay home for a year. Valerie Finkelstein, who was trading biology classes for med school. John Kingsley, who was moving to St. Louis to be with his girlfriend. And Penny Burrick, who had won the Outstanding Teacher Award the year before and was going to Columbia for a doctorate to become an even better teacher than she already was. "One of our colleagues from the English department is leaving us to write the great American novel," the headmaster announced. I blushed and began to push my chair back. "And I'm just hoping for a run-of-the-mill novel," I think I said, shaking their hands now, although, oh yes, in some shameful corner of my ego, never to be admitted in public and to be tasted only with the tiniest, most fleeting lick in private, was a hard little lozenge of belief that this grandiose idea was true. Why not? I was an American, wasn't I? That I had not submitted for publication a single line since Cricket magazine passed on The Misplaced Mitten when I was 12 only meant that I had reservoirs of untapped talent. My gift was a pair of slim books, one titled Character, the other Plot. I was touched by this gesture of support, although I knew I would use them only for a laugh. I had paged through that kind of thing often in bookstores, mostly to reaffirm that I would be a writer different from their intended audience. I aspired to be an artist, to blaze a fresh trail in prose, not to write the kind of paint-by-numbers pot-boiler such manuals encouraged. "You know," Neil McCloskey, my department head, said to me, quietly, kindly, as I held the books up for the teachers to admire, "you're always welcome back if, things don't work out." I complained about this to my best friend Letty on the phone Saturday afternoon. "But that's nice," she said. "He values you." "It isn't nice. He assumes I'll fail." "That's not a reflection on you. Think of all the great writers who couldn't get published. Think of Emily Dickinson. She was a genius, way ahead of her time. I doubt I'll write something too good to be published." There was, it seemed, some limit to my arrogance. "Well, anyway, I admire you. I'd never have the guts." "What you don't have is the time," I said. And as if on cue, a crash sounded somewhere in the background, followed by a frantic wail. "Gotta go," she said, and was gone. Letty and I were so young when we met that neither of us can remember the occasion. Our mothers, so the story goes, deposited us in a playpen at Johnson Campaign headquarters in Pasadena and told us to amuse ourselves. Other than their sporadic loyalty to the Democratic Party and the fact that both of them relished the entirely fictitious notion of themselves as young women so busy with the affairs of the world that they raised their daughters to be independent even as infants, my mother and Pam LaRue have very little in common, and their friendship was long ago reduced to the exchange of non-religious holiday cards. But Letty and I have ever since been as close as twins. That's not to say we're alike. It's more that we're a sort of team, in the classic sense of hero and sidekick, and I don't think I'm being immodest, but only truthful, when I cast myself as the hero. Of course, she's much better than I am at many things, but her qualities, patience, for instance, and an easy laugh, are those that make for a good right-hand man. Even in our games, she was always Robin to my Batman, Watson to my Holmes, Boswell to my Johnson, and the times when she's been clearly the leader have been uncomfortable. I remember distinctly an incident in first grade when we were each assigned to render a tree in fall colors. It was work obviously well below my level of accomplishment. At home, I'd recently completed a mosaic of painted macaroni that approximated one of the floors of Pompeii. But it was enjoyable to do something that didn't demand all of my resources, and I was quite pleased with the artful way I'd arranged and overlapped my swatches of construction paper. Our teacher had been making the rounds of the room, peering over shoulders noncommittally, when suddenly she stopped. "Look here!"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?